To get to in Virginia now, where lawyers for former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James argued the interim U.S. attorney prosecuting them was unlawfully appointed to her role. MSNBC legal affairs reporter Fallon Gallagher has been inside court all morning. MSNBC senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin's back with us. Fallon, I understand things have wrapped up. What do we need to know?
Anna, the big headline today is that there is no decision from the judge on whether Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed. She did say that that decision will come by Thanksgiving, so within the next few weeks. As far as the proceedings, the government and the defense both made arguments that we've seen in a lot of the briefs. The defense went first. There was a lawyer speaking on Comey's behalf who basically argued that this is another example of the administration violating the appointments clause. They are saying that Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed and therefore ineligible to serve as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia when she secured both of these indictments against Comey and James. They went on to argue that this is a separation of powers issue because if the Attorney General can appoint an acting U.S. Attorney on an interim basis for 120 days, like they're saying that they can here, then that bypasses congressional authority and also judicial authority to keep these U.S. attorneys in place. The government responded that that is completely invalid and that this is merely a quote, paperwork issue. They went on to say that the Attorney General has, quote, broad authority to appoint as many 120 days terms for these U.S. attorneys as they would like. Now, the judge seemed a little bit skeptical of that argument, that I would say during the defense's presentation, she mostly listened and looked straight forward. When the government was arguing, she asked some more questions and some were more pointed. Specifically, she asked about a decision in the Jack Smith case, which I think Lisa can actually speak to quite well.
Lisa, go for it.
One of the things that she seemed to ask the government as they were on their way out the door, essentially, do you think that the decision by Judge Cannon in United States versus Trump, that's the classified Mar-a-Lago documents case, was wrongly decided? You and our viewers may remember that Judge Cannon invalidated Jack Smith's appointment on the grounds that it violated the Constitution's appointments clause. Why? Because he constituted an inferior officer based on his powers that should have been nominated by the president and Senate confirmed, but in no case simply appointed by the Attorney General. The point Judge Curry was trying to make, or at least was insinuating, is that Lindsay Halligan is really no differently situated than Jack Smith. The whole point of the special counsel regulations is to empower the special counsel to behave as a sort of 95th U.S. attorney in addition to the 94 judicial districts. If the special counsel's authority is really functionally equivalent to that of a U.S. attorney, and the special counsel can't be appointed by the Attorney General without confirmation by the Senate and nomination by a president, well then, what does that have in store for Lindsay Halligan? The government, as I understand it from Fallon, really struggled to answer that question directly, sort of twisting itself into knots. You can see how that would be a problematic position to defend, how Jack Smith's position was invalid and yet Lindsay Halligan's position is okay. I will tell you that there are some minor differences in that a U.S. attorney is always subject to the supervision of an attorney general. That's not necessarily true, though, with respect to a special counsel. Those regulations said that a special counsel can do certain things unless essentially the attorney general says they cannot. That having been said, the attorney general had power to fire a special counsel. The attorney general doesn't have power to fire an interim U.S. attorney. So there are some differences here, but her focus on Judge Cannon's opinion is not a good sign for the government's position in this case.
We were showing some live pictures as you were talking, ladies, of James Comey's family leaving the courthouse. I'm curious, Fallon, who else was inside that courtroom? Was Lindsay Halligan there? We know she wasn't doing the arguments on behalf of the government in this hearing.
That's actually one of the things that was most interesting about this hearing. So you saw the Comey family walking out. I think nearly all of his children, his wife were here, his son-in-law, who actually used to be a prosecutor for the Eastern District of Virginia and resigned shortly after the indictment. They were all here. Comey himself was sitting in the front row. Noticeably, who was not here was Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. Her entire legal team was here, but she was not present in the courtroom for this. I would be interested to know what the thought process was behind that. And then, as you referenced, Lindsay Lindsay Halligan was sitting at the table to the right next to the government attorney who was arguing on her behalf. Notably, she did not speak once in the entire hearings. She sat at the table. There were a few times where she whispered next to the other DOJ lawyer who was sitting next to her, but she never spoke anything, even though she was the main character in this entire hearing. Anna?
Lisa, how does that strike you?
Well, usually, Anna, if a U.S. attorney attends an argument in a particular case that they're supervising, that U.S. attorney is silent. It's wholly unusual for a U.S. attorney to do any speaking in court. So the fact that Lindsay Halligan was silent today, particularly when she was the subject of the hearing, doesn't strike me as unusual. What's unusual is the posture of this case that brought us to today's hearing, that a U.S. attorney, himself or herself, having been appointed on an interim basis, is signing indictments because there are no what we call line assistants or career prosecutors who are willing themselves to sign it. Fallon alluded to James Comey's son-in-law, Troy Edwards, who resigned very shortly after the indictment. That also sort of discounts the number of other people who were either fired or resigned in this U.S. Attorney's office attached to the courthouse right here, leading up to and shortly after the Comey indictment. A supervisor in another office outside Alexandria, who is known to be involved in this case, was fired. The person acting under her supervision with respect to this case was fired. The head of the National Security Division here, fired. Another career national security prosecutor, fired, and on and on and on. Sort of the career expertise of the office that Lindsay Halligan now helms has been destroyed. I've heard one former prosecutor in this district describe it as literally the hollowing out or the decimation of legal expertise in this office. So whether or not Lindsay Halligan's appointment was lawful, the impact of her coming to this office solely to supervise these two prosecutions, replacing Eric Siebert, who was the Trump administration's first choice, serving for that 120 days as an interim U.S. attorney, also being the nominee of the president. His nomination was, of course, withdrawn. The fact that she came here at all will have reverberations for years to come, Anna.
But if I could just add to that very briefly, the big implication here with Lindsay Halligan being that sole signature on those indictments, if she is found unlawful, the defense teams are both arguing that that should be grounds to dismiss that because she had no right to bring these indictments in the first place.
Obviously, the ruling didn't come today. Fallon, bring it home for us. What are we watching for next?
Yeah, so we're watching for that judge's ruling, and she said she will have something by Thanksgiving. We don't know if that means, Thanksgiving morning or the day before, or it could be tomorrow. But she is giving herself a couple weeks of wiggle room here to get that ruling because this is clearly very important for both of these cases. Anna?